Alcibiades was a key figure in the later part of the Peloponnesian War, a conflict in ancient Greece. He was not only a statesman, but also a general for Athens. Despite his important role, his fortunes took a turn for the worse as the war progressed. In the early 410 SBC, Alcibiades was all about pushing Athens to be assertive in its foreign affairs. He strongly supported the idea of the Sicilian Expedition, an ambitious military campaign. However, things took a bad turn for him when his political rivals accused him of sacrilege. To escape trouble, he fled to Sparta, Athens' rival city-state. In Sparta, Alcibiades became a strategic advisor, suggesting and overseeing major campaigns against Athens. Yet trouble followed him as he made enemies in Sparta too. He then switched sides again, defecting to Persia. There he worked as an advisor until Athenian allies managed to bring him back. Alcibiades served as an Athenian general for some time, but once again his enemies succeeded in forcing him into exile for a second time. Scholars argue that if Alcibiades had led the Sicilian expedition instead of Nicias, it might not have ended in disaster. During his time with Sparta, Alcibiades played a role in undoing Athens. He had a hand in capturing Deceleia and encouraging revolts among Athenian subjects. But when he returned to Athens, he played a crucial role in securing victories that led Sparta to seek peace. Alcibiades had a knack for unconventional tactics, often winning cities through treachery or negotiation instead of siege. His military and political skills were valuable wherever he went, but his habit of making powerful enemies meant he never stayed in one place for long. By the end of the war he helped ignite. His days of political importance were a thing of the past. Alcibiades first gained prominence when he started pushing for Athens to take aggressive actions after the Peace of Nicias was signed. This peace agreement marked a temporary halt in the Peloponnesian War between Sparta and Athens, bringing a 7-year pause to the hostilities. However, the treaty left both sides without a clear advantage. Alcibiades, according to historians Gorm and Seeley, felt slighted as the Spartans had negotiated the treaty through Nicias and Laches, sidelining him due to his youth. Tensions over the interpretation of the treaty prompted the Spartans to send ambassadors to Athens. Alcibiades, seizing an opportunity, secretly met with these ambassadors before their formal address to the Athenian assembly. He convinced them to renounce their diplomatic authority and allow him to assist them using his influence in Athenian politics. This move alienated the ambassadors from Nicias, who genuinely sought an agreement with Sparta. During the assembly, Alcibiades exposed the contradiction in the ambassadors' statements, damaging their credibility and elevating his own standing. Subsequently, he was appointed as a general. With growing influence, Alcibiades orchestrated the formation of an alliance between Argos, Mantinea, Elis, and other states in the Peloponnese. This alliance posed a threat to Sparta's dominance in the region, but it eventually faced defeat at the Battle of Mantinea. In the years around 416–415 BC, a political struggle unfolded involving Hyperbolos, Nicias, and Alcibiades. Hyperbolos attempted to ostracize either Nicias or Alcibiades, but the latter two combined their influence to convince the people to expel Hyperbolos instead. This incident highlighted the personal followings that Nicias and Alcibiades each commanded. While not directly involved in the capture of Melos in 416–415 BC, Alcibiades supported the decree that led to the killing of the men of Melos and the enslavement of the women and children. An oration urging Alcibiades' ostracism, falsely attributed to the orator Andocides, claimed that Alcibiades had fathered a child with one of the enslaved women. Alcibiades was like the George Clooney, Chris Evans, and Henry Cavill of the ancient world, super attractive. Seriously, he was the heartthrob of his time. Not only was he good-looking, but he also had a way of convincing people to do pretty silly stuff, maybe because of his charming looks or some mind control powers. Who knows? So let's dive into a historical moment in 415 BC during a peace period between Athens and Sparta. Athens' friend Egesta needed help against Syracuse, and they were discussing what to do. Alcibiades, being the charismatic guy he was, stood up and said, "Hey, I've got this great idea. While we're helping out Egesta, why not just take over the entire Sicily? Kick out Syracuse, those Spartan supporters, and boom, we have a bigger empire. Cool, right? Now there was this other guy, Nicias, who was all about peace and didn't like the idea of war and expansion. He disagreed, saying, "Bad idea, Alcibiades." But Alcibiades was slick. He suggested a vote. Who's up for invading Sicily? Everyone raised their hands, and Nicias was like, "Oh no, Alcibiades strikes again." But Alcibiades wasn't done. He threw in another twist. He said, "If we're really going to invade Sicily, we need a massive navy, like 200 ships huge." Nicias, probably hoping this was a deal-breaker, agreed. But Alcibiades turned the tables, saying, "Hey, Nicias just gave us the perfect solution. Let's build that giant navy and head to Sicily." Of course, everyone agreed again, and Athens went all out, assembling the most massive naval force ever. Sure, Athens already had a big navy, but this one was next level, all thanks to Alcibiades and his smooth talking. So just before the grand expedition to Sicily was set to sail, something weird happened in Athens. You see, there were these statues called Herms, which were like minimalist art, stone torsos with a head and, well, male parts. These Herms were sacred to Hermes, the protector of travelers. Messing with them was a big no-no. But surprise, a group of rowdy college kids decided to do some de-Herming the night before the big trip. Not cool. The next morning, Athens was in an uproar about what's now known as the Hermacopic conspiracy. They were on a mission to find the culprits, and somehow Alcibiades got dragged into the mess. Now this makes zero sense if you think about it. Alcibiades was the guy who pushed for the expedition in the first place. Why would he sabotage it? Anyway, Alcibiades goes to the assembly, the place where decisions are made, and says, "Hey, it's me, Alcibiades, still gorgeous, maybe even more so than yesterday. I'm about to embark on this big, glorious expedition we talked about last week. If you want to put this sculpted face and glorious jawline on trial, let's do it now, so you don't mess up my campaign by recalling me in the middle. What do you say?" Athens responds with a big, "Nah, we'd rather wait until you're just about to reach Sicily, like right before you get there. Then we'll recall you, possibly put you on trial, and maybe even put you to death." Alcibiades is like, "Great, fine." And off they go on the expedition with all the glorious fanfare. But here's a clue that things were about to go horribly wrong. While sailing around, the Athenian fleet pulls up at the bottom of Italy's boot, expecting a warm welcome at every stop. They were hoping for cheers, feasts, and all that good stuff, but guess what? Nobody even bothered to show up or give them a nod. So they shrugged it off and kept sailing towards Sicily. Now, leading the show were Alcibiades, Nicias, and a capable general named Lamachus. Nicias, in a bit of a twist of fate, got appointed as a general too. As they were planning, Nicias had this conservative idea, the smallest possible engagement, sticking mainly to helping out Egesta and not much else. Lamachus, on the other hand, had some gutsy plans. He suggested going all in, a direct assault on Syracuse to catch them off guard and kick them out early. But here comes Alcibiades, throwing his idea into the mix. He proposed hitting up Egesta first, which was on the far side of Sicily, and then working their way across. 3 different takes on how to kick off this big expedition. You can bet it's about to get interesting. The Athenian crew sailing around the island, going from town to town, gathering soldiers from the locals as they went. Sounds okay, right? Well, not really. It's a pretty dumb plan because it gives Syracuse, the big target, a heads up to prepare. And as we've seen, the Italians weren't exactly thrilled about the Athenians. In the midst of all this, Lamachus, one of the generals, is like, "Sure, Alcibiades, we'll go with your plan." Why? Well, because Alcibiades is apparently so good-looking. Nicias, the other general, is not impressed, saying, "What the heck, Lamachus? I thought you were smart." Just as they're about to land in Sicily, the Athenians had a genius moment. They send a letter to Alcibiades saying, "Hey, come back to Athens. We want to put you on trial just like we promised." Alcibiades is like, "Oh great, fine." The recall boat shows up, and Alcibiades, being Alcibiades, asks, "Can I take my boat back instead of this tiny dinghy? It's as gorgeous as I am." The Athenians, probably charmed by his looks, agree. As they sail back to Athens, Alcibiades is trailing behind. The Athenians are like, "Hey Alcibiades, you're falling behind." He's all chill, saying, "No worries, keep going, I'm right here." But then, surprise, Alcibiades starts peeling off, goes left, and ditches them for Sparta. The Athenians are left in a bit of a mess, and Alcibiades, the charmer, goes to the Spartan king. He's like, "Hey, I'm Alcibiades, and I'm gorgeous." The Spartan king seems to agree and welcomes him. Alcibiades then starts this successful career of advising the Spartans on how to beat the Athenians. Not a bad deal for a guy who just sailed away from his own people. So, Alcibiades was having his adventures with the Spartans and Persians, but things got a bit messy when the Spartan king noticed a baby that looked a bit too much like Alcibiades. That didn't sit well, and Alcibiades was basically kicked out. So he said his goodbyes and headed over to Persia, because why not? There, he hung out with a local big shot called Tissaphernes, giving him advice on how to handle the whole Athens-Sparta drama. Now let's shift back to the Sicilian Expedition. Even without Alcibiades, it turned into a bit of a comedy. The Athenians, following Alcibiades' plan, were trying to gather soldiers on their way from Egesta to Syracuse. Surprise, surprise, nobody outside Athens was thrilled about joining them. By the time they reached Syracuse, they were met with some serious resistance, as Nicias had warned. In ancient sieges, the idea was to build a wall around the city to cut off their food supply. Well, the Syracusans had other plans. As the Athenians were building their wall, the Syracusans shot out a counter-wall to stop them. This happened 3 more times, and it all got a bit chaotic. Sadly, Lamachus died in the process. With the wall idea a massive failure, the Athenians had to regroup. Nicias was sick, staying in a swamp nearby, and he sent a letter to Athens asking for help and to be relieved because, he was kinda dying. Athens, being the supportive friends they were, sent another general, Demosthenes, to the rescue. His grand plan? Capture the strategic position of the Epipolae, a hill outside Syracuse. To avoid confusion in the dark, they came up with a code word, probably marshmallow. Now here's where it gets a bit crazy. The Athenians were fighting alongside Argives from Argos, and both were speaking different Greek dialects. During the nighttime chaos, when the Argives did their war chant, the Athenians freaked out, thinking the Syracusans had infiltrated. They completely forgot they had Argives on their side, and things went sideways. Classic mix-up in the middle of a nighttime assault, right? Now, imagine the chaos on the battlefield. The Athenians, thinking they were under attack, start stabbing the poor Argives. These Argives, yelling, "Marshmallow, marshmallow, please don't kill me," are getting slaughtered. Meanwhile, the Syracusans on the other side of the hill are like, "Hey Stephanos, do you think marshmallow is a code word?" They use it themselves, whispering marshmallow as they sneakily murder Athenians. It's a mess. Athenians killing Argives, Argives getting murdered, and nobody's having a good time. At this point, the Athenians are starting to realize this whole thing is a disaster. Maybe it's time to cut their losses and get out. But wait, the Spartans show up and sort of blockade them in with the Syracusan fleet. They try to fight their way out, but it doesn't go well. Nicias, still sick as a dog, goes to the oracle and asks for advice. The oracle says, "Wait 27 days before you try to retreat again." Nicias, against the advice of his advisors, decides to follow the oracle's wisdom. Spoiler alert, it doesn't end well. The Athenian boats are wrecked from being in a swamp, and they try a land retreat. Here's the sad part. Sicily is an island, and unfortunately the Athenians are not Jesus. They can't just walk over water, so they end up captured and killed. It's a tragic turn of events, but let's breeze past that and get back to Alcibiades. Meanwhile, Alcibiades is chilling in Persia, giving some advice to the local governor. But his grand plan was never to stay in Persia forever. No, he wanted to come back to Athens with a bunch of Persian money, flaunt his total gorgeousness, and be welcomed back with open arms. So he leaves Persia and finds the nearby Athenian fleet in the Aegean Sea. What does he convince them of? That the radical democracy in Athens is no good, and they should totally overthrow it and replace it with an oligarchy. Classic Alcibiades move. So Alcibiades saw an opportunity in promoting an oligarchy in Athens. Why? Well, because in an oligarchy there's no pesky democracy to issue death sentences, and that's great news for our friend Alcibiades. The plan started with the rich folks liking the idea because, in an oligarchy, they get to be in charge, unlike in a democracy where the common folk have a say. They gathered just outside the city walls to chat politics. Here's the sneaky part. Since it was outside the walls, only the wealthy attended, as they could afford armor and weapons to protect themselves from potential Spartan havoc. These rich folks, in a move that sounds as ridiculous as it is, suspended the Graphe Perrineau Monde, a law against illegal laws. Translation: they wrote a law that got rid of democracy and installed an oligarchy of 400 aristocrats. Alcibiades, happy that the death sentence threat was lifted, didn't mind. However, the new oligarchy in Athens started executing people harshly, and guess what? The fleet, which was now oligarchic, didn't like it. For the first time ever, they created a democracy for ideological reasons, not just political convenience. The result? A confusing mix of an oligarchic city with a democratic fleet, and vice versa. Alcibiades, though, didn't care about the political roller coaster. As long as Athens wasn't a democracy, he was in the clear. He went around fighting battles and doing fleet stuff. In 407, he returned to Athens, and they were like, "Cool, Alcibiades, still looking good. No death threat this time. Go out, be awesome, win us some battles." And he was like, "You got it." Fast forward to 406, the Battle of Notium. Alcibiades, presumably needing a bathroom break, tells one of his guys, "Look, I'm going to go to the restroom. I'll be back in 5 minutes. You be in charge, but don't touch anything. Don't look at the Spartans. Don't even think about fighting them if you see them. Just, don't do anything. I'll be right back." So Alcibiades leaves his guy in charge, who in a classic move, salutes but manages to hit himself in the eye. The guy interprets Alcibiades' vague instructions as, "Hey, let's go fight the Spartans." So they go to battle at Notium, and surprise, they lose horribly. Alcibiades returns, finds out what happened, and is like, "What the hell, guys? I was gone for like 5 minutes." The guys are like, "Oops." Alcibiades, fed up, decides, "Fine, screw this, I'm out of here," and heads to his private castle in the northeast of Greece because, he just has one of those. The last notable event in Alcibiades' life was the Battle of Aegospotami, the final showdown of the Peloponnesian War. Living nearby, Alcibiades leans over to the Athenians and suggests, "Hey, Athens, you're in a strategically disadvantageous position. You should move." Athens, unimpressed, tells him to shut up. Well, they end up losing, and Alcibiades gets the satisfaction of being right. Shortly after, Alcibiades just kind of dies. Now, accounts of his death vary, but my personal favorite version involves his house being attacked by assassins. Picture this. Alcibiades jumps out with a knife, ready to face them, but alas, he gets overwhelmed by a swarm of arrows. It's not the most flattering demise, but it's kind of cool, so I'm sticking with that. And there you have it, folks, the life of arguably one of the most interesting characters in the ancient world, and in my opinion, one of the most fascinating figures in all of history. It's remarkable how so many of ancient Greece's amusing tales revolve around this guy. But hey, can you blame them? Just look at him. He's gorgeous. Despite Thucydides' critical remarks, he acknowledges in a brief detour that publicly his conduct of the war was as good as could be desired. Diodorus and Demosthenes regard him as a great general, with Photiades considering Alcibiades an invincible leader, claiming victory followed him wherever he went. Photiades suggests that had Alcibiades led the army in Sicily, Athens might have avoided disaster. According to him, if his advice had been heeded at Aegospotami, Lysander would have been defeated, and Athens would have continued to rule Greece. However, Paparrigopoulos disagrees, deeming the Sicilian Expedition, prompted by Alcibiades, a strategic mistake. In alignment with this view, Platius and Coleopoulos emphasize that the expedition was a colossal blunder, resulting from a frivolous attitude and an unbelievable underestimation of the enemy. Vlachos, on the other hand, argues that the expedition was not extravagant, but a rational strategic decision based on traditional Athenian aspirations for Sicily. According to Vlachos, Alcibiades had broader plans, envisioning the conquest of the entire West. He intended to conquer Carthage, Libya, attack Italy, and seize Italy and the Peloponnese. Kagan, however, criticizes Alcibiades for failing to recognize that the large size of the Athenian expedition undermined the diplomatic scheme on which his strategy rested. While acknowledging Alcibiades as a commander of considerable ability, Kagan contends that he was not a military genius. He argues that Alcibiades' confidence and ambitions exceeded his skills, leading to significant errors and miscalculations. Kagan attributes most of the credit for the victory at Cyzicus to Thrasybulus, asserting that Alcibiades' decision to leave the fleet in the hands of an inexperienced officer at Notium was a serious error. Press adds nuance to the evaluation, stating that although Alcibiades can be considered a good general based on his performance in the Hellespont, his shortcomings in Sicily should not be ignored. Nonetheless, Press suggests that the strengths of Alcibiades' generalship outweigh his faults. Alcibiades didn't escape the scrutiny of ancient comedy, featuring in an epic clash with Eupolis akin to Aristophanes and Cleon's confrontation. He also takes center stage in various Socratic dialogues, showcasing his physical prowess, courage, and beauty. Antisthenes even claimed, drawing from personal experience, that if Achilles wasn't as handsome as Alcibiades, then he wasn't truly good-looking. Socrates, in his defense during the trial, asserts that he's never been a teacher to anyone, distancing himself from the crimes of his former students, including Alcibiades. The charismatic figure of Alcibiades extends into art, appearing in both medieval and Renaissance works. Modern literature also embraces him, with a notable role in Shakespeare and Middleton's Timon of Athens. Authors like Anna Bowman Dodd, Gertrude Atherton, Rosemary Sutcliffe, Daniel Chavaria, Stephen Pressfield, and Peter Green have featured him prominently in historical novels. Alcibiades even makes his mark in the virtual realm, becoming part of the plot in the video game Assassin's Creed Odyssey. In an unexpected twist, Alcibiades' military prowess is mentioned in the Academy Award-winning film Patton. In a scene during a lavish dinner hosted by U.S. Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr., Allied generals discuss plans for the invasion of Sicily in 1943, citing Alcibiades' strategic acumen. Thanks for watching the video, and if you found it informative, please like and subscribe to Time Capsule for similar content. We look forward to sharing more knowledge with you in the future. Until then, take care.